The Season 1 finale of Loki introduced us to Kang the Conqueror. Well, kind of, because technically that wasn't actually Kang, that was He Who Remains, and a variant of that character we saw in episode 6 is Kang the Conqueror. He even mentioned in this episode that he's gone by many names, and even a Conqueror. So, Kang the Conqueror is out there. We know he's coming. We know he's going to be in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. That's how we knew that this was actually Kang in this episode, because of the casting of Jonathan Majors. And I'm just so excited for this, because we've been waiting the longest time to see Kang in the MCU. I remember back before Avengers Endgame came out, everybody was doing a bunch of theorizing of like, oh, Avengers 4, Kang the Conqueror is going to be introduced. He's going to be the big bad villain instead of Thanos and all this stuff. And then obviously that never happened. There were even rumors back with the first Avengers movie that Kang was going to be in that movie, and he never was. But now he finally is in the MCU, and I'm really excited to see what the actual blue Kang the Conqueror looks like in the MCU. I'm really excited to see that. But especially with how Loki Season 1 ended, you can tell that Kang is going to be having a huge role going forward in the MCU. And a lot of people have been saying that he may even be the next Thanos. And I 100% agree with this, because when it comes to Kang, they waited to introduce him until the very last minute of this episode. And if you think about it, like I said, it was He Who Remains, the character that we had in this episode. And then at the end, when Loki was at the TVA and he saw that statue at the TVA, I'm pretty sure that was Kang the Conqueror that the statue was supposed to represent. So it was just that one last shot of the Loki Season 1 finale that we actually saw Kang the Conqueror, even though it was just a statue. And that is very similar to how with Thanos, the big bad of the Infinity Saga, the first, I think, maybe 11 or 12 years of the MCU, was first introduced and first teased in the post-credit scene for the first Avengers movie. So this is like a very similar thing here, where Kang the Conqueror, if he is the big bad of this new saga of the MCU, he is teased at the end of this Loki finale and is set up for a huge future in the MCU. Again, we know he's going to be in Loki Season 2. We know he's going to be in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. And honestly, who knows what else? He could be in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. We really don't know for sure. But he's going to be playing such a huge role going forward. And with all the rumors and reports and really big theories that the next Endgame level event, possibly even next Avengers movie, is going to be Secret Wars, he has huge ties to that. Not necessarily in the comics. I'm not sure if Kang actually has anything to do with Secret Wars in the comics, but the way they've set him up in the MCU and the way they've been setting up this Secret Wars, as it's been described in Loki, that there was this crazy multiversal war that started when a bunch of variants of Kang the Conqueror started battling each other. So, seems like something very similar may be happening down the road in the MCU, which could be, again, this next big Endgame level event where we have all of these crazy variants of Kang the Conqueror, all these variants of various other Marvel MCU heroes and even villains battling against each other in this crazy multiversal war. And it just makes so much sense, because Kang, when you think about it, comparing Thanos to Kang, at first it might not seem like Kang has any chance, but really, Kang is even the more powerful character, especially when Thanos doesn't have the Infinity Stones, but maybe even with the Infinity Stones, because yes, with the Time Stone, Thanos could reverse time, and I don't know if he could travel through time, but he can manipulate time in a couple different ways. But Kang is literally from the future. He has an army of Kangs, which in the comics is known as the Council of Kangs, and he just has all these crazy various weapons, and plus there's multiple versions of him throughout history, both good and bad. We know that one of the characters, Nathaniel Richards, actually goes on to become Iron Lad and join the Young Avengers, which is another big thing that is being set up in the MCU, as we've seen with all these MCU Disney Plus series. Billy and Tommy being introduced in WandaVision. We got Eli Bradley in the Falcon Winter Soldier, Kid Loki in the Loki Disney Plus series. We're getting a new grown-up Cassie Lang in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Kate Bishop is coming to Hawkeye. We got Ms. Marvel coming up, Ironheart. So the Young Avengers are coming, and that has another huge tie to Kang the Conqueror. And when you're looking at this big villain who's supposed to be the big bad guy of this next Endgame event, it needs to be a villain that is powerful enough and has enough ties to all these crazy characters, because when it comes to Endgame and Infinity War, one of the reasons that those movies were so big is because it was such a huge crossover throughout the MCU that had not only the Avengers, but also the Guardians of the Galaxy and every other Marvel hero we had already been introduced to in the MCU. And we're getting a lot of new characters introduced to the MCU in the next coming years. So they all, or at least most of them, have to and actually seem like they will be having some pretty big, huge ties to Kang the Conqueror. Avengers and Doctor Strange and Loki, obviously those all connect together with Kang. Young Avengers, like I said, if they do the Nathaniel Richards Iron Lad route, that would tie in that way. And then also we even have the Eternals, which are going to be introduced in their new solo film this fall, and they actually could possibly have huge ties to Kang the Conqueror as well, because we know that movie spans over like 500,000 years, or maybe even more than that, because they've been around on Earth and as like sleepers with like nobody knowing they were there this whole time. And Kang the Conqueror, again, has been alive throughout multiple periods of history, and probably one of the more notable ones, obviously, other than Kang the Conqueror and like Immortus and Iron Lad, is Rama-Tut, who was a pharaoh version of Kang the Conqueror. And this would tie into the Eternals because they were around at that time when the whole, Egyptians and pharaohs were around, and could have ties there. Which, speaking of Rama-Tut and the pharaoh version of Kang the Conqueror, that also, I believe, would tie into the X-Men, or at least possibly, it depends on how they do in the MCU, because one of the reasons there is a version of Kang as Rama-Tut in the pharaoh time period is in relation to Apocalypse, the first ever mutant in Marvel history that basically created mutants and all that good stuff. So he has huge ties to all of these different characters. Also, Fantastic Four we know is coming as well, and Kang the Conqueror was literally introduced and the character debuted in a Fantastic Four comic, so he is a big Fantastic Four character. So I think this just makes so much sense, and it really does connect everything together so perfectly, because that was one of the things that worked so well with Infinity War, is that you brought together mainly the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy. They both had ties. The Avengers had been basically chasing this mysterious person who's been after the Infinity Stones. The person that sent Loki in the first Avengers movie brought the Avengers together in the first place. And then with the Guardians of the Galaxy, huge ties to Ronan and Drax's family and Gamora. That's all because of Thanos, and that's how they all came together. And now Kang the Conqueror, this next Endgame level event, could be Avengers Kang Dynasty or Kang Siege or something like that, whatever they want to call it, or it could just be the Secret Wars movie, or it could be like a 2-part movie where it's like the first movie, like Infinity War and Endgame, where it's like you got the Kang movie and then the next one leads into Secret Wars. I don't know, they could do something like that. But again, all of these big MCU superheroes and teams that we know are getting introduced to the MCU in the coming years, at least in the next 10 years, because I honestly don't expect this to happen anytime soon, they all have ties to Kang the Conqueror, at least could potentially, depending on how they do it in the MCU. And again, I think it makes so much sense, and Kang the Conqueror really does have that potential. You got Jonathan Majors in the role, who's such an amazing actor, as you saw in Loki episode 6, and I'm so excited to see his future in the MCU as this character and all the variations of Kang the Conqueror. It's just going to be really, really cool, and he's going to be sticking around for a while, and I'm really excited to see this. This will probably be like the multiverse saga of the MCU, and it's going to be absolutely insane. I really cannot wait for it. But guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Do you think Kang the Conqueror will be the next Thanos, the next Endgame level Avengers villain for the MCU? And guys, thanks so much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video and hit the subscribe button so I can keep you up to date on everything that goes on in the Marvel life.